was in a coffee shop the other day looking through the want ads when I read Macy's Herald Square, the largest store in the world, has immediate openings for fun-loving, outgoing people of all shapes and sizes who want more than just a holiday job. Working as an elf means being at the center of the excitement. I circled the ad and I laughed out loud. The gentleman seated next to me turned on a stool, checking to see if I was a lunatic. I continued to laugh quietly until the check arrived, and then I realized I don't have a job. It's funny how you can just forget a thing like that. I brought the ad home with me, and my roommate Rusty and I were laughing about it, and he suggested that maybe I call Macy's for an interview. So I did. The woman at Macy's asked, "Are you interested in full-time or evening and weekend elf?" I said, full-time elf. So I have an appointment next Wednesday at 2. I am a 32-year-old man applying for a job as an elf. I suppose it could be worse. I mean, I often see people dressed as objects standing on the street corner handing out leaflets. Now, I tend to avoid leaflets as a rule, but it just breaks my heart to see a grown man dressed as a taco. So, if there's a costume involved, I tend not only to accept the leaflet, but I accept it graciously saying, "Oh, thank you so much," and thinking, "Oh, you poor pathetic son of a bitch." The other day, I accepted a leaflet from a man dressed as a camcorder. Let's see, hot dogs, peanuts, tacos, video cameras. These things make me sad because they don't have a place. They don't fit in on the streets. Maybe in a parade, yes, but not on the streets. I figured as an elf, I will have a place. I'll reside in Santa's village with all the other elves. We'll reside in a fluffy wonderland filled with candy canes and gingerbread shacks. It won't be quite as pathetic as standing on a street corner dressed as a French fry. I'm trying to look on the bright side of things. I arrived in New York about 3 weeks ago with high hopes. Hopes that have been challenged. In my imagination, I'd come from Penn Station directly to the sets of One Life to Live, where I'd drop off my luggage and spruce up before heading off to dinner and drinks with my new celebrity friends. Victoria Buchanan, the show's greatest star, would lift her frosty glass in my direction and say, "Everyone, people, please, may I have your attention? I'd like to propose a toast to..." "Clint, darling, sit down. This isn't about you." "I'd like to propose a toast to our friend David, the newest member in our television family. Welcome to Landview." And I'd say, "Oh, you guys, please, cut it out, really, it's too much." And then Vicky would lay her hand over mine and say that I'd just better get used to being the center of attention. But instead, I'm applying for a job as an elf. What's even worse is the very real possibility I won't even be hired, that I can't even find work as an elf. That's when you know you're a failure. But I'm down to the wire here. I am $20 away from walking dogs. After calling my mother and begging her for a loan, I applied at a place that covers styrofoam creatures in moss. Now, left to its own devices, nature can cover things in moss for free. It's not that difficult of a task, but still, I didn't get the job. A skill. A person needs a skill. Now, why hadn't that ever occurred to me before? To become an elf, I had to fill out 10 pages worth of forms. I took a multiple choice personality test. I underwent 2 interviews, and I submitted urine for a drug test. The first interview was general. It was designed to weed out the obvious sociopaths. But during the second interview, we were asked questions about why we wanted to become elves, which when you think about it is a rather tough question. I listened as the woman ahead of me, a former waitress, answered the question by saying, I want to be an elf because I think it's all about acting. And before this, I worked in a restaurant, which was run by this really, really wonderful woman whose dream it was to open a restaurant. And it made me realize that it is really, really important to have a dream. Everything this woman said ended in a question mark, and the interviewer never raised an eyebrow. When it was my turn to answer the question, I said I wanted to become an elf because it was one of the most frightening job opportunities I had ever come across in my life. The woman raised her face from my application and said, "And?" I'm certain I failed my drug test. My urine had roaches and stems floating in it. But still, they called me back for another round of questions. I met with two head managers for a brief interview where they asked me questions regarding my interests and hobbies. Now, I can't recall my exact words, but somewhere along the line I expressed an interest in whittling. I panicked. I was just trying to find something elf-like, and I think I must have pulled it off because I was sent downstairs to fill out a series of tax forms, and then after that I was ushered into a large holding pen where I took a seat beside a female dwarf. This, I thought, was a good sign. Names were called, and the shortest people were ushered into the manager's office. After them went the guys with the biggest ears and women without chins. I waited a long time. And then just when I'd given up all hope, the manager stepped outside her office, cocked her finger at me, ushered me in, and said, "Congratulations, sir, you are an elf." I have spent the last several days in a crowded windowless Macy's classroom undergoing the first phases of elf training. Today we were lectured by the Santaland managers and presented with a Xerox booklet of the regulations entitled The Elfin Guide. Many of the Santaland managers actually are former elves themselves who have worked their way up the candy cane ladder. But they still retain vivid memories of their days in uniform. Several of the bosses actually led us in motivational cheers, a concept which stuns me to the very core of my being. One of the guys actually rolled his sleeves up and said, "Give me an S!" "Oh, S? How about an A? A. How about a legal N? N. Did someone say T? T. Let's have a recall. Oh, that A. A. What's that spell? Santa. Who's the man? Santa. Come on, elves. Be proud of who you are. Let's raise the roof. Santa. 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 It was his job to send chills up our spines. And personally speaking, I think he did an excellent job because I was mortified. They closed the session by saying, "Remember, even if you are assigned photo elf on a busy weekend, you are not Santa's slave." Not Santa's slave. I spent the rest of my 8-hour day with 50 other elves and a perky, well-meaning instructor in another enormous Macy's classroom, the walls of which were lined with NCR 2152s. An NCR 2152, I have come to understand, is a cash register. Our class was broken into small groups and were given several little assignments. My group included several returning elves and a few experienced cashiers who tried helping me by saying things like, "Don't you even know your personal ID code yet? Jesus, I had mine memorized by 10 o'clock. "Well, everything about the cash register intimidates me," I said. What's worse is after I've accumulated $300 in my drawer, I have to remove 200 and fill out half a dozen forms and run the cash envelope to the drop in the China department or to the vault on the balcony behind the first floor. I won't be allowed to change my uniform beforehand. I'll have to go dressed as an elf. An elf in Santaland is one thing, but an elf in sportswear is something else. Today we were told that during the second week of December, Macy's Santaland is host to Operation Special Children, at which time poor children can receive free gifts donated by the store. There's another day set aside for horribly sick and deformed children. On this day, it's an elf's job to greet the child by the magic tree and then jog back to the house to brace our Santa about what's coming next. The next one is missing a nose. Or, excuse me, Crystal is suffering from third-degree burns covering 90% of her body. Missing a nose. With these children, Santa has to be very careful not to ask, "And what would you like?" Interpreters for the deaf came, and we were taught how to sign, "Merry Christmas. I am Santa's helper." They taught us to enunciate clearly and use bright facial expressions while we sign. They also taught us how to sign, "You are a very pretty boy/girl. I love you. Do you want a surprise?" My sister Amy lives above a deaf girl, and she's learned a lot about sign language and has taught me a little. So now I'm able to sign, "Santa has a tumor in his hair, the size of an olive."